Well, we're back. It's Friday, January 30th. And with me, I have Amy Hood. Actually, no, I don't. Amy Hood's not with us tonight, but do have Game Logic with us. What's going on, Logic?
Nothing much, man. We're just having a lot of emergency meetings from the, $440 billion of market cap that we just bled out,
Oh,
over the last
man.
48 hours or so. Things seem to be stabilizing now, but it was apparent kind of Wall Street, was out to punish us for kind of this ephemeral, pile of cash that we have been alluding to for the last year or two. These promissory notes that have been written, these IOUs, people were not happy. So
Yeah, Wall Street was not happy with Microsoft for sure. They were not happy at all. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I wasn't planning on doing a BRAP rant, but we have some news that came out. We have the state of the gaming industry, 2026 state of the gaming industry. This is the GDC survey that comes out every year around this time. Some really some good insights there. And then we're going to have Falky join us here. David Faulkner, who's a financial analyst, is going to join us to talk a little bit more about the Xbox quarter two fiscal year 2026 numbers. So we talked a little bit about it on Wednesday show, but Falky couldn't make Wednesday show, so I wanted to get him on because just kind of get his thoughts as an analyst on what he's seeing there in the numbers, and kind of have some additional thoughts after kind of just thinking about the numbers and just kind of marinating on those numbers a bit, and after Wednesday's show. But welcome everyone to the live chat. Thanks for joining us. And please do me a favor, do the YouTube thing, hit the like button, and let me drop a link here. You could do us a solid. Please share the link to the show on your favorite social media platform, and let everyone know we are live. So, Logic, it's some interesting news today too. Like this is, I mean, if you follow, if you've been following some of the coverage around the Epstein files, something very interesting came out today. And I did a double take, Logic, when I read this. Tom Warren had reported earlier today, Tom Warren from The Verge, that Microsoft had in fact banned Jeffrey Epstein from Xbox Live in 2013 for harassment, threats, and or abuse of other players, severe, repeated, and or excessive. Like this is, I just did a double take. I'm like, what happened? Jeffrey Epstein was actually banned from Xbox Live. This is just, I don't know. It just, I was shocked. I was shocked. And I actually thought, I wasn't even sure if there was like a, I guess, serious news story, but it is. It's a thing. I mean, other media outlets have have been reporting this too. So I think Paul Tassi Forbes reported it. It's titled the Epstein Files reveals Jeffrey Epstein got banned from Xbox Live. So it's just very interesting news item. There was something else today too, Logic, that came out. Did you see this? Shinobi posted this earlier. Video game stocks are suddenly crashing today with the launch of Google's Project Genie, as investors think games will start getting made with AI. Now, I didn't really pull the article on this, but I just thought it was interesting that was that's a story that's been floating around there on social media. Have you read anything else about that? The stocks dropping, Logic, or you just saw it kind of come across your timeline?
It's all the post. There's some validity to the bleed off, but I haven't had time to look at the causality. I don't think that would normally be something that I would chase down.
Yeah. There was something else to. I can't find it now. There's something else that came across my time. I thought it was kind of interesting. Oh, and then there was. I do want to talk about this article actually. We talked about this earlier. Chris String had posted something about. Let me pull up Chris String's Twitter account here. All right, where is Chris String? Oh, well, Chris String actually, and we'll talk about this. Goes back to the GDC survey. Chris String said something to the effect regarding the developer surveyed about which platform they're making games for. Chris String, and we'll talk about this later. To be fair, it won't be long before you can get it on Xbox via Steam, which I thought was kind of interesting. But the article that this is an opinion piece in GameIndustry.biz. I don't know if you saw this, Logic. Let me share this real quick. I'll get Falky in here. Falky!
Hey, how you doing? Sorry I'm late.
No worries. I have to ask, what's the weather like down there? Because it's freezing here.
You're going to hate me for this. It is perfect. There's a lovely sunny day, light scattered clouds, gentle breeze. It would be, mid 20 degrees, so probably somewhere in the high 70s, early 80s for you guys. It is just gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous day outside.
Falky's standing up, admiring the gorgeous weather, the sun, the clouds.
It's beautiful. Beautiful Saturday.
It is not beautiful here, Falky. It is cold. It is fucking miserable. I feel like I'm living on planet Hoth right now. It is. I tell you, I think at some point, it might get down to, I don't know, with the wind chill, maybe -5 degrees Fahrenheit.
Wow.
Yeah, it is cold.
You guys are crazy.
It was 21 degrees Fahrenheit as a high today. And mind you, we had a snow sleet storm last weekend, and none of it's really melted. It's basically like there's big mounds of ice and like the equivalent of like snowcrete. People are referring to it as snowcrete because it's like concrete. You can't. It is a pain in the ass to shovel. You can't dig in with the snowblower. It is.
Wow.
Literally, I'm living on planet Hoth. Yeah, I'm waiting for the Empire to discover the rebel base.
Oh man,
it is not fun. But no, it's great.
I do feel badly for you, but I'm also quite happy about the weather outside. So
clearly, you stood up, you're looking outside, and no, thanks for joining us, Fuck. You know what? And it's great seeing you because that means that we haven't. We're still we made it to another day.
Yep.
Humanity has survived another day.
No one has pressed the red button yet.
No, and you are coming to us live from the future, literally from the future.
Absolutely. It's been a while. Thanks for having me back. Apologies for the late start. I was trying to get the time zone sorted out again.
No worries. Glad you could make it because we do want to talk about some of the financials, the Q2 financials, Xbox financials. Because I gotta be honest with you, I have been thinking about this. We talked about this on Wednesday's show, but I don't know, something just feels a bit off here. Just the math ain't mathing, as they say. But we'll get into that a little bit here. But I think a byproduct of go ahead.
I was going to say I did note, and for those who are listening who haven't probably noted or picked up from other places, so over the Christmas New Year break, I went away for a few weeks with my family to visit other parts of my family up this top side of the country, and spent a fair chunk of time just decluttering from social media and getting rid of a heap of stuff and not worrying about a heap of stuff. And I've come back to work in the last couple of weeks and getting back into routine. And I started to poke around on Twitter again, or X. And my Lord, there's some stupidity going on that place. And I must point out, BRAP, that you really do need to stop engaging with those idiots. They have no clue what they're talking about, and it's only going to drag you down to the gutter, and they're going to beat you senseless with their stupidity. Just do yourself a favor and just let it go past, let it go through to the catcher, as they say,
Yeah.
as the Americans say, and proceed on with life. But man, some of the people that are engaging on the stupidest things.
Yeah, no, Falk, yeah, I appreciate those words of wisdom, and I will. It's interesting. Like I did take some time off from Twitter, and then more recently I got back into it. I kind of dipped my toes in the political conversation of Twitter, which it's just 10 times worse, I think, than gaming Twitter. By the way, like people literally, well, people lie too on gaming Twitter, but the politics side's even worse. People literally make up stuff. And I'm like, you do know there's something called Google. You can actually fact check some of these things, and people are blatantly lying and using AI. And I actually fear for humanity, Falky. I don't know.
Yeah,
But,
I'd stay away from the politics on social media because everybody's absolutely 1,000,000% right, and none of them have got a clue.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right. Well, there was an article of Game Industry Biz, really kind of, I think, born out of the fiscal year 2026, the Q2 numbers for Xbox. And the title of this article is there a future for the Xbox platform? Microsoft's status as a leading publisher is assured. And this is interesting, Logic, because I've been talking about this a little bit. Xbox as a platform, which I want to get to here in just a sec as well. Microsoft's status as a leading publisher is assured, but with weak new financials casting down on the strategic transition, the path forward for the Xbox is unclear. This is, again, opinion piece by Rob Fahey, contributing editor at GameIndustry.biz. He writes, Microsoft's latest financial results make for a grim reading for anyone invested emotionally or otherwise in the future of Xbox. The headline figure is that revenue from the company's gaming operations fell 9% year on year in the 3 months from October to December last year. But within that is a really dramatic figure, a 32% crash in hardware revenue. Software and services revenue also fell, dropping negative 5%, much of which may be attributable to the weaker performance of last year's Call of Duty, which was Call of Duty Black Ops 7. The sheer scale of Call of Duty as a franchise can be both a blessing and a curse for the company. A stumble for COD can easily erase any gains from other aspects of its software and services strategy. That is a big problem because it essentially rules out the only possible positive narrative about these results. To wit, Microsoft is in the middle of a massive and unprecedented transition for its game business, transforming Xbox from a console brand into a service platform. Disruption on the hardware side of the business is inevitable consequence, but look, the software and services numbers show that it's working. Yeah, I don't know about that.
You know how I usually get stuck into logic about him giving too much grace in his analysis at times? I'm going to do the same thing to Chris here. He's being too nice.
Oh, this isn't Chris. This is Rob. But go ahead.
Oh, Rob. Sorry. Apologies, Chris. Rob, you're being too bloody nice.
He goes on to say that's not what the software and services numbers show, though. While COD's underperformance is arguably, hopefully, a one-off, the focus on Game Pass and on cross-platform gaming just doesn't seem to have been the game changer that Microsoft hoped for, at least not yet. And I almost feel like we've kind of been in this vicious cycle with my Xbox of just give it time. They're investing. I had this conversation with somebody on Twitter, and I said this to Logic today. I said, somebody responded to me as well, maybe their numbers are down because they're still investing in expanding the platform. I'm like, investing where? What are they investing in? Cloud is there. Game Pass is there. They've acquired studios. They've put their games on PlayStation. I don't know what else they're doing, and it seems to be this thing of, at least from the fan base, oh, give it time. This is the future. Put your games everywhere. That's the future. And I don't know, Falky, like something just seems amiss to me here. And again, I know it's only one quarter, but if I go back and I look at Q2 2025, fiscal year 2025, content services was down 1%, and overall game revenue was down, I think 7%?
Yeah.
It was down. Yeah, go ahead.
But this is the quarter. This is the peak quarter of the cycle. It was forecast to go single-digit growth, and it's gone near. It's as good as close to double-digit decline in the quarter when they had the biggest chance of selling stuff. They had the most amount of games across the most amount of platforms that they ever had. They had new games released in that quarter because remember, this is the December quarter, October, November, December. It includes Black Friday sales, Cyber Monday sales, and Christmas sales. And all that stuff that they've done and put it out there and pushed it across was Forza Horizon. I can't remember the exact date. Wasn't Forza Horizon in that window? The launch on PlayStation in there? I'm sure it was. I'm
I
sure it
don't
was in
know.
October. Or something in October came out. I just they had one of the tent poles pop out in October, I'm sure of it. And then they had November it was, whenever it was. And
No, Forza Horizon launched April 29th,
April.
2025.
No, there was some.
Yeah.
What was it? One of the
Avowed released. I don't know if I would call Avowed a tentpole, but Avowed is a.
No. It was one of the something came out that was one of the big ones because everyone blew up about it. I'm pretty sure it was October and just before Black Friday.
So
maybe I'm thinking about Call of Duty.
Yeah, the 4 Xbox games that shipped on PlayStation in this quarter were Ninja Gaiden, Call of Duty. Dang it! I just went over these on the show Wednesday night.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, I can't. I thought I had them memorized, but apparently not.
Must
I'm
have been
forgetting
Call of Duty I was thinking of.
Avowed 2.
No,
Avowed 2 not go on PlayStation though, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So the Outer Worlds 2 was the other one, and then there's a 4. Oh, in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024.
That's the one I'm thinking of.
Yeah,
because there was COD underperformed big time compared to previous years. It underperformed in terms of quality and content, and then it underperformed in terms of financial performance because of what they did trying to get it in with Game Pass. And it's done exactly what we all said it was going to do. It was going to kill off the revenue, and it wasn't going to bump because of the trade-off in people buying up. And it produced a player number, and it was visible in the player numbers. I don't know why people are surprised. Like, there's things that lined up, and if you took an optimistic perspective, you went, well, they've pumped all this stuff out. PlayStation's going pretty decent. Nintendo's doing pretty decent. PCs are going pretty decent for those who've got them. You would expect that the publishing side for content and services would go okay. You know, World of Warcraft still powering on, and they had all this other stuff coming out, and then you look at this and you go, holy crap. Not only are the people not going into that ecosystem, people are, and it's not just a casual getting out of that ecosystem. This thing looks like they're jumping ship. To have that kind of downturn when the year on year that it's comparative to, which was the second quarter last financial year for them, to December 2024 quarter, that one was barely moving compared to the year prior to that. It's not great. And it's the downhill run when your hardware's effectively finished in this cycle. It didn't even make 5 years. Hardware started dropping off after 3.5 years. Then that's me being nice at 3.5 year mark. The hardware started dropping off in 2023, mid 2023, 24 financial year. Then the content and services has just not responded to the price increase. This is the other thing too. Remember, they've gone down on revenue after having price increases and releasing on platforms where games are selling. And if you remember the arguments online about the who's got the publisher with the top games on other platforms, and people were thumping their chest saying that Xbox and Microsoft were dominating PlayStation charts and dominating all these other charts. Great, but it has not translated into the expected revenue or performance, financial performance they were demanding. In fact, it's more than a 5% variance, which means someone's got some explaining to do up the chain, and not good. I'm not. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some serious repercussions out of this, but I don't think there's too many more, floggings that they can give certain people. But I am a little bit surprised that we haven't heard of mass. Well, I haven't heard of mass layoffs. I've heard of some restructuring going on, but they seem to be minor at the moment. I was actually expecting some pretty sizable layoffs to be coming down the pipeline in February, to be announced before these things came out. But yeah, I just it's not surprising how badly it was. I was expecting small, like maybe 2-3% down, because they've done that massive push on the PlayStation, whereas the previous year they hadn't really. But yeah, man, alive. I don't know if it's the suffering of the quality or the suffering of the pricing or what's going on there, but they've shot themselves in the foot pretty big in this one.
So Falky, the thing that stands out to me again is, let me pull up the numbers again here. Give me a second here. I got to find the numbers, but that was it. I had it here somewhere.
God, they're spending some money, these guys. Sorry, I'm just looking at the cash flow statements again for Microsoft overall. God, they're spending some money. It's
They're
like
spending
they've got
money?
a furnace and they're just shoveling it in there. Microsoft, they're just shoveling money into a furnace. It's crazy what they're doing.
You talking about like with the game business?
No, game business is getting none of this because this is all going into AI infrastructure. That's going to balloon out of control. I mean, that's a 3 or 4 hour conversation that the three of us could have just on the AI and Microsoft and others' investment in it alone. It's insane and it's unsustainable. But yeah, just looking at Microsoft's consolidated statement of cash flows, they are like the money that they're generating. So for the December quarter, the net income across the whole business was $38.5 billion for rounding. They took that $38.5 billion of net income, net cash from operations 35.7 when you adjust for all the other stuff. And of that 35.7, they didn't put any of it in the bank, and they pulled another 4.5 billion out of their bank account just to get through that quarter. The bank balance is going backwards. They're drawing down on their cash reserves and investments to fund whatever it is they're doing in their AI stuff. If anyone thinks Microsoft's got cash to buy anything at the moment, they are delusional. If they're not careful with this arms race in AI, Microsoft's going to find itself in a position where their ability to purchase is going to be significantly hampered by their investment commitments.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I've said it for a number of years that gaming is at the bottom of the totem pole and could quite easily just be turned off to save them from spending money on it. That would be the more sensible thing to do than try and sell it, because it would cost money to try and sell it. And it's at the point now where it is underperforming so badly that if they're not going to do a goodwill write down to adjust for that Activision purchase, and how they get that past their auditors, I do not know, because must be getting into the area of materiality now. There must be some serious conversations around, do we want to keep doing this? Do we even bother to keep investing money in this if our AI push is so important? And they get someone in there who at the leadership point that says, you know what?
Not Satya.
We can't afford to be second or third or fourth by a long way in that development area, because then it's done. It'll just flick the switch and turn it off.
Yeah, I actually posed that a question to a former industry executive, and I said, when do they throw up their hands and just get out of gaming? And the response was, they won't. Satya wouldn't want that black eye. Like, that's not especially after,
Yeah.
and there'd be no ROI, right? In that $80 billion. Well, actually, I'm gonna round it up, Logic. It's not $80 billion. It's $100 billion that they've spent in the acquisition of publishers and studios.
North of 100 billion.
North of 100 billion. Thank you. And that, yeah, with Sacha wouldn't want to take that black eye, and then again, there's that ROI. They wouldn't have any ROI. And then selling it off, or it doesn't make enough money to garner any interest from an investor to buy it. So
you said acquiring studios and publishers, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Because it's not just the publishers. That's their aggregate spend that they've spent acquiring studios and publishers.
Yeah. That's that's what I said. Yeah, studios and publishers. Yeah. And I used to say $80 billion, but Logic, I'm going to go with that 100 billion, north of 100 billion. But if you look at gaming revenue was down 9% year on year. Gaming revenue was down last fiscal quarter Q2 of 2025. I think it was down 7%, if I remember correctly.
It was down 7% year over year last year out of the last the preceding holiday quarter.
Yeah. And then Xbox content services revenue last fiscal year Q2 2025 was only up 1%. Now it's down 5%. And then, hardware revenue down, minus 32%. But I mean, now we're seeing not just consecutive quarters of hardware revenue being down, but consecutive fiscal years of hardware being down. So, this article is kind of interesting because, you talk about Game Pass, he says, looking at the data the company chooses to report and omit, it's also quite telling. We haven't had an update on Game Pass subscriber numbers since February of 2024, when he stood at 34 million.
We're never going to get one. We're never going to get another one. They'll just keep pointing at MAU. They're never going to talk about Game Pass numbers again.
Well, let's talk about, we can talk about MAU and how, I mean, these numbers seem to speak. We're going to use that evil word, ARPU. This, I mean, let me know what you think, Falky, because I am, again, something just seems amiss to me here. The math ain't mathin', as they say. People talk about MAU. People talk about the Game Pass subscribers, and then I see negative, right? In the quarter that I might add had your biggest tentpole, right? Logic, you described as your biggest poker chip, right? In Call of Duty, and I get down year for Call of Duty. Yeah, go ahead.
They fired the nuke. They went into the missile silo, right? Both Satya and Phil inserted their fucking keys, turned them at the same time, pushed the red button, right? Fire the nuke. They did it. They put Call of Duty in Game Pass, and it's not having the overall result that you would think. Like you said, I'm not sure exactly where you're getting the one. So I'm looking at the earnings slide, and I'm seeing content and services last year was up 2%.
Okay.
This year,
I thought it was 1%.
Yeah, but this year down 5%. Like that doesn't, like there's like 9 ways to Sunday that doesn't. I say it doesn't make sense, but I think the more realistic thing is not a good indicator. Is not the thing you would have expected to happen, right? Like I talk about executives, right? And what executives do is they look for data input so that they can make decisions, right? I often refer to it as they have wheels, dials, levers, and switches, right? That they can push and pull. And you're trying to change the mix on the inputs to get the desired output. And that looks like a lever that they pulled that's not having the desired output. Like the other things that I mentioned today that are reasons why the mix should be coming out different is a big one. And to my feeling is, like, I get the Call of Duty thing in Game Pass, like that everybody can get, right? But the killer that I think people are really missing is that you had a huge reduction in head count in the gaming division between the 2 quarters that we're talking about, right? Between Q2 FY 2025 and Q2 FY 2026, right? You laid off 2,000 people between these 2 reporting quarters. So you knocked down a ton of fringe and overhead, right? In your overhead cost basis. On top of that, you canceled tons of projects, which means your direct costs that would be carried by that P&L center, right, in terms of the capital expense that's going towards software development, is also off the books. Now, yes, there's some double counting of dollars there if you consider the salary for the developer is also counted in the but there are two different columns on the GAAP compliant accounting statement that gets entered. On top of that, you also knocked off any of the work that you had contracted out. So you knocked off whatever cost you were spending to Crystal Dynamics, to outsource that work. You knocked off the money you were paying to Contraband. So you had these massive cost reduction efforts between these two reporting quarters. And your net result is that you slid backwards on content and services.
It's pretty sobering when you hear about, all the efforts that went in and things went backwards. And that's why I made that comment the other day. The only thing that they can do now, if they can't maintain the revenue, let alone grow it slowly, and it starts coming backwards, their only choice here is to start slashing costs. They've started that, and they've been going hard at it. Now they've got to go harder at it. That's why I made that comment. Look at the next thing won't be average revenue per user. To maintain their MAU, they'll look at what the minimal cost input is to continue to keep an MAU level that's sustainable. Average cost per user will start coming up, and it already is, because that's a pretty critical part of working out whether AI is sustainable or not.
Mm-hmm.
It's insane. They've still got It's not. I mean, the pivot was 3 years too late, and they've dragged their heels in their cost reduction program. They've cut costs in the wrong places at times, and they just seem to have not realised that the big bet on ABK hasn't panned out. And as Logic said, they've gone into the silo, put the keys in, flicked them over, pressed the button, and it has well, misfired's probably not the right way of putting it, but it's I don't know. It's kind of just trickled out the end of the silo and then fallen on the ground. It's not good.
Well, the other thing it screams to me, Falky, is that people inside the ecosystem, we do people like to talk about MAU. We've talked about ARPU on the show. It seems to me that people are spending money inside the ecosystem now. They're spending less inside games in terms of maybe microtransactions. And I also wonder too, I don't know if we talked about this the other day, Logic. I wonder if subscription churn due to higher price tiers with the increase of Ultimate Core, whatever, last year, if that has caused people to leave Game Pass, right? Which again is less spend. And it just they just don't seem to be able to be monetizing, being able to monetize their active users right now. People just aren't spending. That's what this says to me. Now, and I said this on Twitter. I said, if this is, I'm not saying this is a red flag per se. This might be maybe a yellow, but I think this trend continues. Then it raises serious questions about whether or not this pivot is working. Because I don't know if it is. I mean, what do you think, Falky? Do you think this thing's working out, or is this maybe just a blip?
No, well, it can't be a blip. You can't say that there's a blip in your most important quarter for retail. And gaming is retail. Let's not muck ourselves around here. The other two core items that Microsoft is involved in, their mainstays, if you like to put it, those two things are all year round. They don't necessarily have cycles because they're all business to business engagements. But yeah, so it's not fickle like the retail sales is, but the retail cyclic, or the impacts of retail cycles on gaming are there, and you just you wonder what the sustainable look like when you've got an install base that is now just, taking that point of what are we investing in, and are we prepared to invest this much money if it's going to be on sale, or if it's going to be accessible here, or what are we looking at? um I just, it's concerning when you would expect to see at least maintained, and from a revenue perspective alone, maintained, even with the price rises and the expansion of sales and the performance on the charts and all the rest of it. I tell you what, it's I'll use a cricket analogy because I can. um, it might relate through to baseball, it might relate through to other sports. In cricket, it's always said, you never know how good the pitch is until both teams have batted. And at the moment, the performance here looks horrible, but we haven't seen what PlayStation's had in terms of its performance. If PlayStation comes out and has a downturn performance that's down 2 or 3% year on year or something like that, you say, all right, well, clearly there's larger market factors at play here, which have been overlooked by just about every analyst so far that's writing stories about this performance. But if PlayStation come out and make a comment that is positive, 2, 3, 4%, then it's, yep, there's definitely fire where there's smoke. If PlayStation come out and say that their quarter 2 or their December quarter 2025 was one of their best on record, that's extremely telling, because it'll mean that all the effort that's gone in from Microsoft's side to be on that platform to generate more revenue is costing them a lot, and it's just giving money to PlayStation for nothing, effectively. And it should not be discounted if that is the case, because Microsoft has become one of the biggest publishers on PlayStation after that ABK purchase, and they decided to start releasing games over there. Microsoft has jumped to the top of the list of publishers on PlayStation.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be a bit more of a backdrop around that part of the industry. But even like, you look at the performance of some of the other publishers and how they're going with their financial stuff, they're doing fine. It's not horrible. I mean, the ones that are always having restructures, I mean, Square Enix restructures every 18 months, but some of the other ones are having a good time. Nintendo's turned their stuff around through their publishing work. They're selling their console fine in most areas, and you can see what's come through in terms of game releases and sales and whatnot. It's not looking great, but yeah, I think they'll the end of next week will probably give us a very, very good backdrop as to how bad is this actually. And I don't think it's damage limitation, because at the end of in October, when they gave us the forecast for this thing, they were talking about single digit growth after a quarter where they were expecting to be flat, and they got some small single digit growth. So the September quarter of 2025 was a slight surprise on the upside. This thing is a big surprise on the downside.
So, Falky, when did the PlayStation numbers come out? Because that's actually a great point, right? If PlayStation numbers come in similar, then maybe there's some broader industry dynamics that people aren't discussing, right? And I think that's a fair point.
Yeah, when was it? It's the end of
Place,
this week coming? 5th.
PlayStation numbers are expected out February 12th, and Nintendo's are coming out February 3rd. Is what I
February 12th?
understand. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I'm just looking at the website now.
Oh, PlayStation comes out February 3rd?
February 5th.
Okay, so
Nintendo's
next
out the following week.
Okay, so the 5th for PlayStation?
February the 5th. Yep.
Oh, I thought I heard Logic say the 3rd.
I thought the one I'm looking at says Nintendo's are out the 3rd, PlayStation's are out the 12th. but I could be wrong.
Let me check. So Sony's website saying their material will be available on the 5th of February and the broadcast is on the same day. But that's their website. You never know when they update these bloody things. What was it?
Yeah,
Nintendo.
Yeah, Nintendo.
Yeah.
Now I'm seeing Nintendo.
This is how much fun.
Second.
See how much fun I have on weekends. I'll sit here and look at stocks and bonds and stuff. I was looking at PMIs and bond rates and stuff there during the week and explaining it to some of my staff, and they just look at me weird and they go, "You're crazy."
Yeah,
I'm like,
my understanding is people are buying up gold like it's no one's business right now.
Yeah, gold
US,
and silver, and the banks are
U.S.
fiddling
Treasury
around
notes
in
or
it.
something. Yeah.
There's a talk. Yeah, one of my staff members was like, "You're crazy," and I said, "No, it's all good. This and this and this. It says that Australia's going to have an interest rate rise in February, and I've been tracking this since October, November, and it's going to happen next week on Tuesday. Australia's going to get an interest rate rise."
Yeah. So for accuracy from the actual Nintendo investor relations site, theirs is February 3rd.
Yep.
Yeah.
What have they done? Something there.
All right. I want to bring this damn good 7525 says LOL lies. Developers are moving away from Xbox and PlayStation. Doesn't mention Nintendo, which is kind of funny. He's citing the GDC survey, 20% and 40% respectively.
And he's citing it incorrectly.
Yeah,
but I'll address while he's over here making a fool of himself, and he's an idiot when you get done.
Yeah, shocker, by the way. Yeah, he even has the percentages in front of. Sorry, because 80% want to work only on PC, which is why Microsoft is a step ahead. Come on, Brad, stop. I guess I'm Brad now.
You've got an AI admirer.
Mike, I'll say this. This is the argument that people make about the Xbox pivot, right? That they're a step ahead. And then when I see these quarterly numbers, and arguably the biggest spend quarter for consumers, right? The holidays. And I see these numbers down. Are they really a step ahead?
Nope.
I mean, I think that's a fair question to ask. I mean, are they really a step ahead, damn good? I mean, if they're having...
I mean, the thing that we keep getting told is like literally every week, every month, they're a step ahead, So they're not a step ahead. They're not all of a sudden a step ahead now. We've been being told that they've been a step ahead for 12 years now. So theoretically, there should never be these things, because a year ago, right, people told us that we were a step ahead. They were a step ahead putting Call of Duty in Game Pass. They were a step ahead publishing their games on multiple platforms. They were a step ahead by pivoting away from the exclusive strategy. So the fact that they're having a negatively performing financial quarter is a thing that should not exist, because we were told, right, they're a step ahead by the acquisition. Everything that they've been doing has been for some future that seems to keep moving to the right. Every time I get told that this is the future, this is the future, this is the future, then when I arrive at the future, that's still not the future. Damn good. So they weren't a step ahead before the last 12 times that you guys said that they were. So why should we have confidence in your credibility that they're going to be a step ahead next time?
Yeah, I want to follow up. Damn good says Xbox Magnus hybrid next gen console will be the refactoring ecosystem for developers to create games.
Build one.
While Sony will have to do something quickly. That's why PS6 will be delayed to see what options. Fan fiction. It's just purely fan fiction. And this is the problem I have with like some of the Xbox, the diehard Xbox fans. I've been listening to the same song and dance. And mind you, look, I've been in the Xbox ecosystem probably longer than you have, damn good. For those who don't know, I was an Xbox Live beta tester, so you can thank me later for helping build out Xbox Live 20-something years ago.
It's all your fault. It's all your fault.
Yeah, it is my fault. But I remember when Xbox, when their business was actually successful and there was growth, and you didn't see these types of numbers. I remember that. And but post, Xbox One, it's this conversation. It's always, it's going to be they're going to free up ESRAM. That's going to give us the edge over PlayStation 4. Oh, they removed the Kinect. That's going to open up more processing power. Going to give us the edge of PlayStation or give us parity of the PlayStation 4 in terms of resolution on games. Oh, cloud is going to make up the difference in power. Oh, these studio acquisitions are going to be the game changer. Oh, Play Anywhere is going to be the game changer. Oh, the acquisition of ABK is going to send Game Pass subscription numbers through the roof. It's always it's always this tomorrow. Oh, this is going to happen. Xbox Magnus is going to be a game. Why would I be confident in that when every time or any time that I've seen these predictions be made, the opposite has actually happened. And we know the opposite has happened because we have actually tangible data that supports this, that shows us that what you are predicting has not happened, has not come to fruition.
And I mean, so go into his post, right? 80% want to work on only PC. So this is why you're an idiot. And I'm only calling you an idiot because you came in here using the term lies. If you want to come in here and have a disagreement, that's fine. If you have a difference of opinion, that's fine. You come in here with accusations like lies, I'm just gonna get rid of you because nobody needs your stupidity. You're coming in here claiming that 80% want to work only on PC. Dumbass. If you look on page 32 and 33 of the report, which I'm looking at, which I've gone over a half dozen times before I came onto this podcast, which I've already reported on multiple podcasts, it says right there, right below the title line for the chart, choose all that apply. So, dum-dum, if you didn't pass high school geometry and algebra and understand the difference between mutually exclusive and not mutually exclusive number sets, that means that those numbers are not mutually exclusive. That means a person, or maybe you don't understand because maybe you have a problem passing standardized tests, but when they give you those instructions on the test, so let me help you out, just in case you have more schooling to go through. When they give you that instruction on the standardized test, that means you can color in multiple bubbles. If you're capable of coloring inside lines, although it seems to me that you might have problems with that as well. So choose all that apply. So that means a person could check the PC box and the Xbox box. They could check the PlayStation 5 box and the Xbox box. Right? But what this says for what interests you most as a developer right now, there's all sorts of other problems with, like, what is the demographic of this survey? How many people and who were out at GDC? But we won't even get into that. I think that's a level of complexity that's clearly beyond.
By the way, my understanding, Gaming Ledger actually put out a post. He said most of the developers who responded to the survey are not like the big AAA developers. They're actually smaller developing studio or smaller studios. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I would question that, right? Because earlier in the survey, when it talks about the size of the company that people work out, it's skewed very much so towards larger companies.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Right, because 30% said that they worked at companies of 250 people or more. 27% said more than 50 people.
Yeah, but what Damn Good doesn't understand, to your point, is that if you're doing this survey, you're not limited to just one box. You could check multiple boxes. Right. So you could check, oh, I'm going to work on PC, and I also want to work on Steam Deck, and I also want to work on Android. Oh, and I also want to work on PlayStation 5 or PS5 Pro. Oh, and I also want to work on the ROG Ally X box or whatever it's called. Right. Or I want to work on Nintendo Switch too. You could pick multiple choice. You could pick multiple platforms.
So he goes on to say Magnus Hybrid will be a refactoring ecosystem. So I'm not sure exactly what it is that you're saying there, but please understand, when you deploy games to PC, they don't have to be refactored to go onto a hybrid device that supposedly runs PC games. So I'm not sure what you're saying there, or maybe you're not sure what you're saying there. That's why PS6 will be delayed to see what options. Again, PlayStation has not announced a date for the PlayStation 6, so it's impossible for there to be a delay of a thing that has never been announced. Again, kind of simple math, simple grammar, understanding of common basic phrases within the English language. So then you say Microsoft has the Xbox Store, the PC Store, and Steam to sell games. Again, you should recognize that no one sells anything through that Xbox Store. And I'm not sure if you mean the Xbox Store on console. So I think, like, again, you have some problems with, like, precision and accuracy in statements. So maybe you mean just the Xbox Store on console, and maybe you mean the Xbox App Store on PC. I mean, quite frankly, they have the Xbox App Store as well as the Microsoft Windows Store on PC, neither of which moves any large amount of revenue. And again, the entirety of this conversation we're having is that despite having all of these things that you are referring to in the biggest quarter for any consumer electronics company, when quite frankly, they go banga. Many consumer electronics companies make weight for the year off of the holiday quarter, right? And then everything else is kind of gee-dunk. Then they're typically down, right, the quarter preceding the holiday quarter when people are holding on to money, and before slews of new devices get announced. So if you can't make weight in your holiday quarter, you are most likely to have significant problems throughout the remainder of the year. I'm sorry, go ahead, Brad.
Well, the things that he describes, right? These storefronts, and the argument of Magnus is, oh, well, it's going to have everything, right? Well, PC has everything, right? It has Epic Game Store, it has Steam. These things exist already inside that PC.
None of that is new. Xbox has those things today. That's our point.
Exactly.
Our point is that they're selling this stuff on PlayStation, and they're showing negative, right? They're showing movement backwards.
Well, and that's his misunderstanding of the current market, right? And the fact that these solutions exist already. You have PC that has all these storefronts. You have, I mean, it also, he also doesn't recognize it's very hard. And Phil Spencer talked about this when he said, we're not going to out console, Nintendo. We're not going to out console PlayStation. We lost the most important generation. And what Phil's referring to is ecosystem, right? They lost the generation that cemented ecosystems. And it's hard on PC to pull people away from Steam. Ask Epic Games. The Epic storefront, they literally give free games. It's the only place you can get Fortnite on PC, which is arguably the biggest, one of the biggest, live service games. And Steam's still chugging along. They haven't caught up to Steam because it's very hard to pull people out of ecosystems.
And here's a critical thing that you're missing. I went over this earlier this morning on Gaming Outside the Algorithm. So great, right? This is an industry problem and a market understanding problem. So first of all, the industry chases trends. They piled on to Battle Royale, right? They pile on to gas. And now what are we seeing in the industry? We are seeing the fact that people have anchored and entrenched and embedded on these Big 10 games as a service. And so now if you're going to go gas, you are fighting literal giants, right? For people to pay any attention to your game. The market is already feast or famine. I feel like I have to say this every single week. There are 19,000 games published on Steam. Single-digit percentage of numbers of new games will make 91% of the revenue in that given year. So something like 8% of the new games that come out will make 91% of the revenue earned by new games, leaving the other 92% of new games that come out, 9% of the revenue left over to scratch and claw each other's eyes out over. A small percentage of games that are on Steam at all clear $100,000. And today, $100,000, maybe a little less, depending on what industry and particular market segment you're working in, is what you have to pay for an entry-level developer. So common sense tells you that the vast majority of projects deploying the games on Steam are not profitable. And maybe they break even if they're something coded up by one developer. So my point is, it's great. A thing that needs to be taken into consideration when you look at the survey is 80% of people want to target PC. Yes, that's why there's 19,000 games showing up on Steam a year. And that's why the vast majority of them will not be profitable. that's the like you look at the what was the other chart? The other chart was what are your priorities when you decide what platforms you're going to, right? I think 78% of them or something said like addressable market. I forget. I gotta
Makes sense.
right.
But the part of that sorry, I'll just jump in quickly. The part of
Yeah.
that survey that if you're going to use it, if anyone wants to use a survey for proving a point, you need to understand the context and the direction it was coming from and what it's there to tell you. Graphs and surveys are there to tell you one thing at a time, not a multitude of things. And you need to be very mindful about the sample size and all the statistical work that goes in behind it to figure out what it's telling you. And what it's telling you is this is where people want to work, but it's not telling you why. It's not telling you how. It's not telling you the drivers behind why they've provided those answers. It's piss easy, and I mean it. It is piss easy to develop a game and put it on PC and just worry about that's the only place you got to put it. Because you don't have to deal with other platforms and all the rest of it because Steam makes it so simple for you to do it. Or Epic. They actually let you do your small indie games and put them on the Epic Game Store for free. You can't do that with a PlayStation or a Nintendo or a Xbox ecosystem. And you certainly can't do it on a Windows ecosystem. But if you're going to try and develop something and put it, build it so that it can be played on a PC or a mobile or whatever it is, Steam just makes it so easy to do. And their method of revenue sharing and all the rest of it, you say there's 14 or 19,000 games a year published on Steam. You look at the top 20, top 50 games on Steam every year. It hardly shifts. So obviously, if you're not going to have a high chance of generating revenue because you're going through a publishing house or you're pitching an idea and self-publishing, which Steam allows you to do as well, and you're just using the base version of Unity or Unreal Engine or whatever it is you're building it in, a lot of these indie games that have got 2, 3, 4 people or even one person building, of course, they're going to put them on PC because it's the easiest place to do it. Because the system exists. It's like using Apple products. They're plug and play. You just click here and you follow your nose. But if you're interested in being on multiple platforms, there's an awful lot of extra work and a lot more moving parts that need to go into it. And that's where the big publishing houses have these arrangements in place, but you've then got to perform. So without having the context around using a survey to say everyone wants to just develop for PC, why would you want to develop for PC expecting a financial return if you're having to compete with thousands and thousands and thousands of new releases and the tens of thousands of games that already exist there? You get buried in the mire. You get lost in the forest. Unless you're going to put in the effort to have additional support and advertising and promotional work and all the rest of it, which costs a shitload of money these days, you're basically just turning it into the wild and hoping for the best. So, yeah, a lot of people might have responded saying they wanted to release stuff on PC, but that doesn't explain why or how or when or if it's PC only. And it certainly doesn't give a good explanation as to whether they will successfully continue to release games once they've dumped something on Steam.
And I think that's the key thing, Falker, right? It's the difference between how people responded to a survey extrapolated to it being successful and therefore Xbox being successful.
Yeah.
That chart on page 30, right? 78% want to target a platform because of audience reach, 44% because of business model success, 43% because of discoverability, 28% because of ease of use. Steam, ease of use. Steam, audience reach. Steam discoverability, that's a problem, right? On that platform. So again, yes, a lot of people are going to target going to PC, which means because they own 70 to 85% of the PC market share, a lot of people are going to target going to Steam. But that doesn't by a country mile mean success. Nor does it mean success for a given platform, particularly when that competitive environment is becoming more contentious because Steam is attempting to mature into a platform. going head to head with the same space that Xbox is heading for, right? And this is something that I wrote last year or a couple of years ago, right? The next battleground is going to be, I mean, it's kind of already decided. PlayStation and Nintendo have taken the console market and have split it basically in half, high low, right? The next big battleground is going to be, because Steam is maneuvering away from PlayStation and Nintendo, and Xbox is also maneuvering away from PlayStation and Nintendo. So where are those two going to wind up? They're going to wind up on the same battleground, going head to head. And so that's going to be where the next big battle is going to be, in this micro PC space. And it's going to be anchored by the strength of your digital storefront. PlayStation, very strong digital storefront. Nintendo, very strong digital storefront. Steam, incredibly strong digital storefront. Xbox, no, not a strong digital storefront. And so those things that you mentioned, damn good, all those other places that they sell games, they're selling those games in those places and giving 30% revenue share to those other digital storefront owners.
Let me grab this super chat here real quick, gentlemen. Tam 15514 with the $5 super chat says, surprise Phil's still with Xbox. Thank you for that super chat. I appreciate it.
So in another idiotic comment in the chat, sounds like the host is rooting for games to not go to Xbox.
I saw that.
Again, a grotesque lack of understanding and grasp of language, right? I don't care whether or not games go to Xbox or not. That's not up to me to decide. I decide where I buy games. The market and the demand signal that they send is what will determine games going to or not going to Xbox. And that movement is already afoot and has already occurred. The game I'm playing right now, not on Xbox, chose to skip it. And we've gone over the reasons why developers sometimes make that choice. Where I will agree with this Steam survey, with this survey from GDC, is clearly you're seeing, at least for the subset of sample population that was surveyed out at GDC, not a ton of interest in developing for Xbox. So again, I'm glad somebody, I'm not sure if it was a Nate or Hidden Stereo or Street. I'm not rooting for any of these things. I'm stating what these things are objectively, because on other shows, that's not what happens. What happens on those shows is you get a narrative and agenda that doesn't interpret the objective data that's out here plain and simple for everybody to see.
Oh boy, this comment. How Xbox? Gee, the grammar's killing me here. This person speaks like a Dinobot. How Xbox can how Xbox can share can be small when Steam Deck has sold 5 million units, since Valve doesn't have a physical console, while Xbox Series is at 40 million. 40 million is really, that's a false equivalency, sir.
I think I'm just
worse. That makes it worse. That comment there just makes what we've been discussing worse. Like, if the expectation there is from this individual, let's say individual, is that the Steam should be considered minute because Xbox, it's only got 5 million Steam Decks. Steam's on PC, and there are plenty of PCs out there that far exceed the amount of Xbox consoles that are out there, and Steam can be played on any PC, whereas Microsoft games that are based out of Windows can only be played on a Windows PC. The crossover that cannibalizes the sales revenue between a console and a PC for Microsoft is horrible, and that's a strategy that someone should have been dragged out and flogged for. But if we're saying that, the 40 million should be considered a large part of the market, then the financial performance that they're putting out there is deplorable. And Steam should be getting, golden stars every 5 minutes for the amount of revenue and game production that they facilitate and generate through their storefront. If the starting point is saying that they're only 1/8 of what Xbox is, and mind you, Xbox is less than half of what PlayStation is, and PlayStation is currently running at about half of what Nintendo is. So,
and Falky, I'd even argue that Steam's overall business is healthier at the moment.
it is, because all Steam has to do is run their storefront, and then they've got their little console stuff that they're starting to get into, which is niche. It is niche. It's not going to be a competitor in the console market for various different reasons, but that's fine for them. That's their size and scalability. There's a little spot there in the market for it, and they're going to have a go at it, and good for them. Why not? But they're never going to go head to head with PlayStation. The only company that could go head to head with PlayStation is smart enough, which is Nintendo, is smart enough to not do it, because they know if they just stay nice rivals, they both make a lot of money. They try to drag PlayStation in the ground and beat them to death, they'll end up running out of cash. Don't forget, Sony owns a bank. They're backed by 3 national banks, and they're considered a cannot fail by the Japanese government. No one's going to beat Sony to death in this war. So there's no point trying.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, damn good. Maybe you missed an announcement that happened, but Valve is building this thing called a Steam box or Steam machine. So your statement about not selling a physical and now you flip back. So I get the game. You are definitively on the disingenuine argumentative framework, right? That's the Bible you're preaching by, because you started this by saying the hybrid console that allows PC games is what is going to be the winner. Now you're arguing on the grounds that the Xbox is a console, and therefore it's not the same market, and it's going to be stronger because they have 40 million consoles sold. So which is it? Is it the console market or is it the PC market? Like, I'm not sure which argument you're making at this point.
I don't even think he or she knows what argument they're making. They just keep moving the goalpost. Trying to have a gotcha moment.
While you guys are engaging with that
troll
that piece,
troll.
I was going to use another word, but you can't use that on social media anymore. I just very quickly, would we accept as a point that Microsoft Gaming, not Xbox, but Microsoft Gaming as a whole, as at the end of December, would have had 18,000 employees? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that relatively tracks, right? So they were at 21,500 or so after the acquisition, and they have laid off about 4,500 people since the acquisition closed. So they should theoretically be right at about 17,000.
All right, let's go with the number 17. Sorry, I got distracted and bored, and I started doing stuff with numbers.
Falky's running numbers now.
Give me the average cost of a standard developer for what Microsoft would use in their gaming area. About 100, 120 a year salary, wage.
I want to say in my models I've been using 150 to kind of bracket high low and compensate for your Fair senior enough. People versus your entry level.
Well, and that's just salary though. That's not salary plus benefits.
The total cost plus fringe. I mean, I think Falky knows the figure. I think it's like 1.5 times their salary.
Yeah. You go 1.5 times will cover off on your own costs, and all the rest of it, and get pretty close. But then you got to add your facilities and occupancy costs on top of that, which is roughly about another 10 to 20. $15,000 to $20,000 per employee that's housed in a building somewhere in the US. It's actually higher in Europe. It's a bit lower here in Europe, in Asia.
And Falky, you're not even including. You mentioned housed in a building. You haven't even factored in the cost of that building.
Yeah, that's what I mean. If you put so $150K to pay the person for a year, it'll cost you another $20,000 to put them at a desk in a building somewhere. That's per year. So we're at 170 already, and then you got to add another 10, at least in the US, another 10,000 for technology costs per year for licensing and IT equipment, hardware and service license, all that. So now we're at 180. But the 150 you've got to multiply up by 1.5 to get all your on-cost stuff covered as well. So 150 plus 75 is what, 225 plus 20 is 245 plus another 255. And then that's just the direct cost for the individual to sit at a desk and do something. You're 255,000 per head. Now add all the additional stuff that's required for running a business just for that unit will be another potentially $10,000 to $15,000 per head, depending on how many you got. The more head you got, the lower it'll be. So if we're at 255,000 and they haven't even pushed a keystroke yet, I shouldn't say haven't pushed a keystroke. All they've done is sit at a desk and pushed keystrokes, and nothing else has happened. Then you think about all the additional stuff that comes through, contractors, the repairs and maintenance stuff that has to happen, all these other things that get factored in. And then suddenly you're going, right, well, at 255,000 in the US per head, how do I sustain this? And that's before you even talk about, and I talk about the corporate overheads that crush businesses, small units. That's not even factoring in when you've got all the corporate governance, corporate reporting, all the executive level stuff that goes on from the C-suite and all the minions running around at VP level and all that sort of stuff. That doesn't include audit, assurance. It doesn't include any of your financing costs. It doesn't include any of your administrative costs. We're just talking about people sitting there pumping it through. No HR, no finance, billing, back end, any of that stuff. And that's not the technology, not including the technology costs of the R&D amortizations that come across from all the extra stuff that goes in. Doesn't include depreciation, doesn't include any of that shit. By the time you add all that stuff up, and this is when I did an analysis 12 months ago, it would have been for doing some consultancy work. We worked out that if you were doing program development, not gaming, but just general programming development in the US per person at a decently qualified person, and you had a building full of them, it was going to cost you somewhere around $400,000 per head per year.
Oof. So Falcon,
Yeah,
so you're running.
Admittedly, we were doing the costing based out of the West Coast. If you do it in Texas or you do it somewhere else, it's a bit different. But that was around about the mark. And yeah.
Oh my God, this guy is still going on and on. I let's see here. Wow, you guys, Microsoft has 60 million Xbox One, 40 million Series X, S and X, plus their new hybrid consoles, plus ROG Ally to just leave 100 million customers and get out of hardware business. I
mean, why is he asking us? This is the Amy Hood is literally putting in the earnings slides, right, in the voice track, that anything positive that you're seeing in the Xbox numbers is because of their transition to higher margin businesses. And she's talking about how hardware is the anchor, and hardware keeps moving backwards every quarter by double digits negative. So don't ask me why they have this theoretical hardware base. I mean, maybe one of the reasons they're leaving 100 million customers to get out of hardware business is because Sarah Bond has said that that's what they're doing, that the Xbox ROG Ally X, which isn't really their hardware, is a hardware production that they are shifting to their standard laptop vendor partners to have them carry that burden and worry about the margins and the sell-through of that, because it's not good for a good business for Xbox to be in, for Microsoft to be in. You're at the point where you're asking me questions, asking us questions about why Xbox is telling you the things that they're doing. We don't know. That's the point.
And I got to be honest with you, logically. Okay, look, that is not the flex that Damn Good thinks it is, right? You have all these users, all these consoles out there, and we just talked about the Q2 numbers, right? Assuming that these numbers are accurate and these people are, 60 million Xbox Ones. Are those 60 million Xbox Ones all active users?
They are not spending money.
I was about to say that. Like, you talk about these numbers, they're not the active users, the people in the ecosystem are not spending money, Damn Good, and we know that because we know that based on the Q2 financials that just came out. So like and saying that like this is such an overly simplistic argument. It's me Grimlock, more numbers better. Like that's not it. That's how this works. Like these people, like assuming that these are all active consumers, that all 60 million Xbox Ones are active consumers, they're not. They're not even spending money. And we know this because we see this in the financials.
All these users and all that MAU, and they're spending less than $50 per user. And that's their business.
Yeah. Like Josh here says 500 million MAU, but everything is down. They're not spending cash. Like how many times have we talked about this, Falky? MAU doesn't mean anything without ARPU.
No, and and I've seen you have several arguments with people online who say that MAU is the only thing that matters because it generates this, that, and everything else. It's clearly not generating anything at the moment. MAU is a number in an equation that helps you work out whether you're generating revenue from it or not. I do consultancy work on engagement and revenue generation from social media and online presence and all the rest of it. And the first thing you do is how many clicks or how many engagement points or what's the touch point where you're able to access something and how many different ads can you get on a screen and what sort of banners are you running and all the rest of it and how much you're generating from every click or every impression or every view or every whatever it is, depending on who you're on. And that's important because you want people you want it to churn. You want it to sit there and churn, and that's how you rack up volume. But if you don't have the ability to rack volume, you need to have some level of engagement which allows for quality for them to actually spend it. Because you got the passive background stuff is great, but you want people to actually engage and spend money. So then you got to work out, have I got a product that I can actually sell, or can I get people interested in buying this product? And if that's the case, do I really need to spend so much money on the extreme low value, high churn proposition to just maintain that level of users? It's still and I ask this all the time. How can an organization that professes to have 500 million active users on all this stuff, they just say, we have 500 million users, 500 million active users. It's great. It's across everything. But they never break it down to say, this is how many active users we've got here, they're everywhere. But when you look at their content and services revenue, and you look at their gaming revenue, and those items of revenue, even their advertising revenue takes hits on this stuff. It doesn't generate the volume of revenue that others do with such smaller amounts of monthly active users. And you'd rather have a high average revenue per user for a smaller group because it costs you less to maintain that group. This is the thing that so many, as I said before, average cost per user is going to become the new thing of analytics for everyone looking at it when this AI stuff takes off. Because if you can't sell it to cover the cost, you've got to pull the cost down. And selling business to business is fine to a degree. But when they try to sell this thing business to consumer, and all these big tech companies are struggling with this concept at the moment, and Microsoft has not learned the lessons here. It's plain as day. You try to sell it to consumers, they will only pay you what they believe it's worth to them. And they don't use it to generate revenue in their own individual lives. They use it for either convenience, simplicity, or inquiry. And if you try to tell them that something they can get for free from a Chinese offering is going to cost them $20 a month from a US offering, guess which one they're going to go for? And it will not matter one damn how many monthly active users they've got if they can't get any revenue out of them. And at the moment, that 500 million MAU for Microsoft, it's mostly passive revenue. The active revenue generation engagement is falling off a cliff.
I mean, and I think right to not make this all like a tear damn good down session, even though you did it to yourself, right? What I will say is like one of the things I feel like we need to do right on this show and in the gaming conversations, we need to pull apart like why these things are happening, or we need to pull apart that there are things are happening right that don't true up to what people are saying. Because I will say there's stuff in here that I've gotten wrong. Right? I do not know, don't know, I don't get why market response to Xbox has been what it has been this generation. I don't know why the Series S hasn't sold Bonga. A very large argument is that people just want good enough gaming. Well, the Series S is just good enough gaming. It barely crosses the bar for what most people need. You have these PC Potato Nation people running around talking about playing games at 1080p. I saw a response in a thread to the Monster Hunter Wilds patch that just dropped, right? And this guy's going, "Oh, I'm getting great performance at 1080p." Like, it barely crosses the bar. It is a cheap point of access in this era where the gaming community, right, constantly talks about people just want stuff cheap. I don't know why Game Pass hasn't taken off more so than it has. I suspected that it would. I don't know why Xbox isn't doing Bonga. All of the acquisitions they've made of studios, which I was all for up until Activision, because my own personal philosophies on antitrust and regulation made me feel that was outside the box. But I was all for them grabbing Obsidian. Obsidian, one of my top 5 favorite development studios of all time. Right? So I don't get it. But the difference is, right, between, I guess, the way we cover the news and the way I talk about gaming and the way Damn Good is talking about, when these things happen that don't go along with my predictions, I don't keep standing on the square saying, "Oh, this is going to happen. This is going to work. Just give it time." No, I go, "No, I was wrong. The market's responding in a really wackadoodle way that I don't understand." And I can choose not to understand the causality, but I can damn sure choose to understand that small number worse than big number. That's not really that difficult.
You know? So
just start drinking the reality and start trying to figure that out, right? Instead of making up all these. Like, look, I'm going to be a little generationalist, and then I'm going to get off my soapbox, right? I'm assuming, Damn Good, you're of a younger generation. Like, your guys' penchant for making excuses for why things are the way they are, instead of just sucking it up and saying, "Hey, this is moving backwards," right? And dealing with it and making decisions. Like, I don't get. Maybe you're an old person who also made excuses, and you're part of the reason for the participation trophy mentality of the current world. I don't know. Go ahead, Brett.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a very interesting question. I mean, why Xbox? You talked about like the Series S Game Pass. Like many, I thought that Xbox was going to be very competitive this generation, more competitive than they were with the Xbox One. And then we see that you look at the hardware decline, revenue decline, which clearly shows that demand for the hardware is down. I think it's a combination of this constant shift and pivot in messaging, right? Of what Xbox is. I've felt since the late Xbox One generation that there was this constant pivot, and there was these things that like maybe necessarily didn't resonate with the broader consumer. Like what was it before his Play Anywhere? It was what the hell was it called? Logic. It was a smart buy.
Yeah. I thought smart buy was going to rip the covers off.
I thought so too.
I looked at smart buy and I said, "Now look, every time a game comes out, people are going to say, 'Hey, like this game came out for last generation, and Xbox says if I buy it there once, I get it for the next generation too. Why aren't you doing that? Why should I pay $70 for your game and I don't get the same entitlement?'"
Yeah, so yeah.
Oh, smart delivery.
I thought the same
delivery.
thing.
Sorry. Yeah,
thank you. Yeah, and then when they announced Game Pass, I remember 2017. I was like, "Oh shit!" I'm like, "This is," and I was all in. This is awesome. Like they got PlayStation here, they got Nintendo, and then here we are. Almost 10 years later, Game Pass may have hit a ceiling now, right?
Consumers
I mean,
fickle, aren't they? Consumer behavior is a fickle mistress.
Yeah, but I think, and I wonder, Falky, I wonder if it's just a matter of consistency and messaging and delivery of content and services, or just content and hardware.
If you give people three choices,
yeah,
if you give people more than two choices, most of the time they'll just not bother.
I was about to say that. Like, I wonder if the messaging became too muddled, and they gave too and what they were offering wasn't, to your point, Falky, was a bit more than what people care to invest in or think about. Right? It's like, hey, I want to pick up a console. I want to be able to play good games, and I want to be where maybe majority of my friends are. Right? You know, like I think the value prop for Nintendo is pretty simple, right? You can play our games here, you can play them on the go, right?
Right.
Right.
PlayStation.
I definitely think there's some truth to that, right? I think there's been these various points where the entitlement, right? And I get it. I understand what they're trying to do. And as I always say, I personally feel Xbox's strategy, to me, initially, smell test wise, always passes the smell test. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense, right? But then we see the market doesn't respond, right? So Game Pass, right, passes the smell test. That makes sense. Play Anywhere, even though I think that's an overly convoluted, like, marketing BS title, right, makes sense. What doesn't make sense, right? It's these brief moments in time, and I think part of it is that when you don't come through that brief moment in time, right, then somebody will say, yeah, I'm okay, and I'm not going to bother with that again, right? And what I mean is, so you did Game Pass. We've had Play Anywhere for a very long time, right? It's a new marketing term, right? But it's been around for a very long time. You've purchased a game on Xbox and you've had that entitlement on a PC, right? For a Microsoft title. What didn't pass the smell test was, I'm subscribed to Game Pass Ultimate. I've bought this game, but I can't play this game through Xbox Cloud Gaming because of some weird licensing. Like, I can play this game through Xbox Cloud Gaming, but I can't play that game through it. So, like, things like that have definitely been points where I think they've caused people to lose the plot because, like, people don't get it. I think that's a small piece of it. I think the bigger piece of it. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say I agree with you, Lutcher. I think it's like what Falky said. Like, it's a bit too convoluted to understand. It's like, wait, this works, but this doesn't work. Shouldn't everything work? Right?
Right. Like,
and if you have to make consumers think about it, you might lose right. Some consumers, right? Because, you know, like, consumers some consumers have short attention spans. But yeah, go ahead.
Well, and they don't want to be bothered. Like, they don't want to have to look, I just want to buy the thing. I just want to get the thing. I don't want to be bothered. And these are the solutions that I normally go for, right? I normally go for, like, when somebody comes at me and they're yapping and they're like, this works on a Sunday, but not on a Monday night, and there needs to be a blue moon. And then, okay, but if you're, like, in an area, like, this is why, like, a lot of, like, the sports packages I don't buy, right? NFL, MLB, because there's all these caveats. Well, you can watch this game, but not at this time, and this thing is blacked out, and it depends on. I'm like, bruh, like, no, fine, don't. Like, I don't want to be bothered. So there's stuff like that. But I think, and then I think the bigger part of it, though, for me, that I think of, like, why the market hasn't responded is because we were talking about this more and more and more and more. Like, what people need to understand, I'm going to assert, is there's this big market, right? But this big market is not all spending money. 86% of the PC market is PC Potato Nation. They don't spend any dollars.
Those PCs last 30 years.
Yeah. 500 million people, right, now in the Xbox space, they don't spend. But what is going on in Xbox is there's a very small nucleus of very dedicated people who are spending bonga. I actually think, and if I looked at it, if we had the data and I looked at it, I'm absolutely certain they're spending more. That small subset has a much higher ARPU than the people who are spending on PlayStation, even at average, right? So the average PlayStation spend is $250 per user. I think the small nucleus of Xbox diehards, and when I say small, I'm talking about like north of 100 million, right? But as a subset, right, it's a very small fraction of the whole. But they're spending money because Xbox makes $24.5 billion of revenue per year, right?
I wonder how many of those stacked into perpetuity for $1 a year Game Pass bits are coming back to bite them on the ass at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, there's absolutely that too. But I think so. This whole thing of, like, why I think consumers responded differently because those spenders, and therefore the people who are actually moving the industry, are, I forget what somebody's always reminds me of it, right? Whatever the with the Veblen effect or Verbin or something, whatever is that's the luxury market dynamic that kind of works counter to some of the general thumb rules right within capitalist economies. I think those people land on the square of they prefer quality. And so where they see quality is where they go spend.
Quality and value are inversely related.
Yes. Yeah.
That's a great point. Yeah.
That's why the performance per dollar is so bad for something like the 5090 innate, which I mentioned because I see you in the chat.
Yeah, Nate with his 5090 flexing. Yeah, no, but go back to I want to go back to what I said about like kind of the what Xbox or not what Xbox what like Nintendo is, right? Like what their brand is and what people know their brand to be, right? And then PlayStation. We think of PlayStation, we think of these big, epic, cinematic AAA exclusives, plus very strong third-party support, right? Very clear hardware-centric identity ecosystem. Like we that's like we don't. And then Xbox even now this generation where I think Lauren Fryer, she's a former employee, kind of helped launch the original Xbox, helped launch Gears of War. One of her videos, she said, "Well, if everything's an Xbox, then nothing's an Xbox," and that's where we are now with the Xbox. And I think that
BRAP Jesus is bitter.
Oh Jesus, yeah.
Sorry. Sorry.
Yeah.
We were at PAX last October in Australia, and Xbox actually had like a little section there where they were promoting themselves, and all the paneling they had around was "This is an Xbox. This is an Xbox," and they had a couple of "This is not an Xbox," and things that. One of the things they had on there was a McDonald's Happy Meal. This is not an Xbox. Next to it, they had a picture of a cricket. We call them a cricketer's box, but like a safety device for males that play sport, high impact sport, that protects certain specific area. And it's this is definitely not an Xbox. It was friggin' hilarious that they just decided to take the absolute piss out of themselves at that stage. Like it was comical what Xbox Australia did for that with that promotional stuff. It was hilarious. This is funny as hell. Anyway,
that is funny, but I think some of this too, like where they are today. I think some of this goes back to last generation. I mean, even though like Logic, you mentioned like smart delivery and Game Pass 2017. I think those were positives, right, for the Xbox One. I think they just never, like Phil said, they just never really recovered from the launch disaster of the 2013. And then there were just inconsistency in the release of first party games, and the inconsistency of canceled delayed projects. Remember there was the I'll never forget what the hell was the game that they were working with Platinum Games on, Scalebound, right? That was revealed, then it was canceled. And there was those, and they didn't really have those must buy a console moment during the Xbox One generation. I think that I don't think they just ever recovered from that. And speaking of game release, like people like to downplay exclusives, but like there's very few, in my opinion, there are very few third-party games that I think have the kind of cultural game, like I'm talking about game cultural or industry impact that exclusives have on the industry and consumers. We see this with Nintendo. We've seen this with Sony. Some third parties, yeah. I mean, we talk about Clear Obscure, Expedition 33. It's probably the more recent one that I remember. And of course, for me at least, Baldur's Gate 3. But outside of that, like most of my, at least for me personally, most of those cultural impacts or some of those industry impacts, the things that I hear gamers and developers and analysts and journalists that review video games, a lot of those big cultural impacts tend to, I think, come from some of those first party exclusives. Remember when Breath of the Wild released? We talk about Spider-Man, we talk about God of War, The Last of Us. I'm trying to think of Mario. Those are the games that I think just have help kind of define, the Nintendo and PlayStation's identity, and I think do resonate with gaming culture in a very meaningful way. And I think Xbox, to an extent, has missed that because they had that. I talked about this on this show like 20 something years ago. Halo put literally one game put Xbox on the map.
Check the age demographic, and that'll give you a good indication as to why things happen.
Are you talking about the? Is that on the GDC survey? Or are you just saying in general?
Both. It happens
No.
all the time. It's in the GDC surveys, but it happens in every year when they do the annual. Half a dozen analytics places do the annuals. Like, what's the age? The demographical age of gamers, and then they split male and female, and then all the rest of that. You have a look at that. That's telling because it's not static like a lot of things are. Like kids' toys, children's programs, all that sort of stuff. That's like this is the age that consumes it. Gaming hasn't done that. It's been around for, I don't know, what are we, 35, 40 years?
45 years,
Yeah.
50 years.
And
Yeah.
so penny arcades and all that sort of stuff, it had an age demographic where when you got to 16, 17, 18, you went and got a job, you didn't spend all day there, but there were still people that would come back and get involved in it. But when you had home consoles and access to PC gaming, all that came about, all those that have adopted late earlys and all through the 90s, while the progression was happening, even the early 2000s, they've stuck with it. And it moves like a tidal wave along the graph. And it's not like it's expanding out and it's staying. It's moving like a bump through the graph. And it's the trailing end is part of the argument, the part of the conversation around how do we get more people involved in it and get them to stay attached at a longer rate. But then we're talking about the buying habits of why is this the case? And Logic talks about it several times. I've heard him talk about this, Series Spud should have stuck. Why didn't it stick? Well, it's the buying habits of those that were ingrained in that main demographic of who buys these things is that when you put multiple SKUs out there, you gave them choice and they didn't know which one to get. And then will games work better or less with all the tech spec talk? And then the casuals, what do they want to have? Well, they just want to keep playing, but there's no reason to upgrade to a Series S if you've got a 1X. And it just went, all those things that you've spent the last hour talking about that Xbox and that strategy should have nailed have all conspired in a group to work against them being able to actually take those steps forward. And because they didn't understand their core demographic or the broader core demographic of gamers as they were shifting through that process. It would be a fascinating thing to get a psychologist or someone to do a paper on it from that perspective. I would be really keen to see one of those. But in terms of marketing and buyer habits, the thing that PlayStation has always done, and Nintendo's done the same thing, is it's worked now. It's the same people are going to buy this thing effectively. Why would we change it? That's their buying habits that were ingrained to them from the mid 80s to the late 90s, early 2000s. It's like 15 to 20 years worth of habit across that demographic that's going to stick with this thing. So in where PlayStation and Nintendo and Steam to a degree are having trouble at the moment is not just engaging the newer demographic because they've got an entirely different way of buying and consuming and purchasing. We hear about this all the time as they're competing with TikTok and Instagram and all that. Yeah, they are. But they've got to, if they want to become the entertainment alternative to that short, sharp stuff, they've got to either provide a premium product or engage in the areas where those people exist and try and draw them in to stick with it. That's why mobile gaming's so big, because it's so, 30, 45-second loops and then off they go. Back in the day, we used to get in the arcades and it was a 60-second loop and you'd be finished on that one and you go to the next one. So it's like reinventing the wheel. But that's the thing that they all seem to be missing. And I don't think the surveys put enough emphasis in the consumer habits of what the demographic is doing and how that demographic isn't like people just sort of phase in and out. It's not a static point where people just phase in and out and we've got to grab as many as we can. Expanding into new markets is the same problem. You're trying to get people to change their buying habits or their consumption habits, or you're trying to modify your business model to meet those. These companies pay hundreds of people billions of dollars a year to figure this shit out. And some of them get it right, and some of them don't. And this is where these they're not really analytical pieces. They're just more commentary pieces, if I'm being brutally honest, that come out and go, hey, this is what's going on here. This is what's going on there. This is what we can observe because it's already happened. They're not looking, they don't see the look ahead piece. Take what you know and see what's going to happen over here. They don't give enough credit to those that are trying to push that envelope. And I'll circle this back around to Xbox being they offered too much choice in too many different places. And people just went, I'm not comfortable with the change in my buying habit. So I'm just not going to engage with it as much as they want me to. And changing their perspective every 12 to 18 months was just reactionary, and they never gave anything a chance to stick. But mind you, they never put any value against that stuff either. You say, oh, Game Pass here, first 3 months is free, and then you can do $1 a year, and you can stack them in perpetuity, and off you go. And here's a catalog. And it's like, all right, great. Well, where's the, it's great value if you've got no money to spend on gaming, but gaming's not like a broken thing to do anyway. It's not cheap to start off with. You can get into it relatively cheaply, but where's what value have I got at the end of this? And there's a couple of people when they did the big price jump did a couple of skits about it, and it was really funny things. They're like, "Oh, I unsubscribed to Game Pass. I've got no games. I can't play anything. I've got a console with nothing on it." So it's not appealing if it hasn't got what the casuals want to play in it. And so then it's like, well, I've still got to buy the thing, and it's just a mess when people are trying to go through a matrix of what should I be doing here. When your alternative is they've got a console, it's either got a disk drive on or it doesn't. So all I need to decide is do I want to buy them digital or buy them physical, and I just have to buy it anyway. And then there's the casuals. That's the casuals market sorted out because that's all they want to know. And not to harp on it, but PlayStation's got the same problem. Half their monthly active users are still sitting on a PS4 or PS4 Pro because they don't have to jump up to a PS5 yet. At some point in the next 6 to 12 months, one would expect there'll be a big shift up because the technology will just start to shift forward, and Fortnite and FIFA and all those other ones will drop off those older consoles. They'll have to. But until they do, that's where the casuals are sitting.
Fucker, one thing that you brought up, which just always just cracks me up and I find mind-boggling, flummoxing, like I can't figure it out, is it's always strange to me how, and Damn Good did it, and tons of other people, how there's such a large group of people that ascribe to the company that has not figured out the market, has objectively proven an inability to assess, gauge, and project what consumer response will be to a product, how they consistently heap upon that organization the accolades that they understand where the market is going. I'm like, if they understood where the market was going, they wouldn't be in the position that they're in now. If 10 years ago, 5 years ago, they understood what was happening, then they would have made some choice that would not have that. Like, if Xbox gets it, if Xbox always does everything before PlayStation, then why in 2016, 17, and 18, when they were doing this big wind up to walk into this next generation, all positive things that I all bought into, Game Pass, PC Game Pass especially, smart delivery, the acquisitions of studios that I loved, right? If Xbox always understands everything and is always playing 4D chess and always always does everything first and then PlayStation copies it, why are we in the state of market share distribution in the market that we are? It would seem that you would, at some point, you would understand that the organization that you think has it on lock and has it figured out actually doesn't. Otherwise, they wouldn't be where they are.
It almost seems logic, like they're throwing shit on the wall to see what sticks.
And
yeah,
it's not unique just to Xbox and Microsoft gaming. They have this problem with a lot of their business to consumer, like Windows, OEM, and those sort of things as well.
I mean, they haven't had much success in the consumer space. You go back to like Windows Phone, Zune, um, Surface tablets. I know they still make them.
Banned.
Band. What was the platform they had that was supposed to compete with Twitch?
Mixer.
Mixer, yeah. They just haven't had much success, but that's actually a great point, Logic. Like if they like, why are we to believe that they have some kind of inside track into where the market's shifting, and they've done things. I mean, even last generation where that was the same narrative when Game Pass released too in 2017. Subscriptions are the future, and then yet here we are. And then you look at some of the comments here about subscription services like Apple Arcade, Xbox Game Pass, and I'm not saying those things don't hold value in the market or that consumers don't use them. What I'm saying is that the impact of Game Pass when it was released in 2017, I think, was overstated by a lot of the fans who said, "Oh, Microsoft understands when the market's shifting," but yet here we are, 9 years later, and it's like they've reinvented themselves. I can't even count how many times now, and have shifted away from, or not shift. They're shifting away from hardware now. I think it's a great point, Logic. Falky, were you? I'm sorry, were you? I don't know if I cut you off. I thought you were chiming in.
No, you're right. I was just mucking around, looking at some numbers and graphs, just to move the conversation along, but going backwards to earlier points. So I've been sitting here fiddling around with numbers because I can't help myself. So I was looking at the detailed financials for this Xbox thing. So I imagine that's what one of the driving factors here is the financial performance for developers in getting a return off publishing on Xbox. Because a lot of them are just not doing it now, for various different reasons. But the details, so the revenue generated by Microsoft Gaming in total for the second quarter was $5.958 billion, which is $450 million more than the first quarter, but it is $620 million less than the same quarter last year. So forget about your percentage bits and pieces. That's cash, real actual revenue, cash. They did $620 million worse than they did the same quarter last year. So when we talk about that drop off being so significant, that's gaming in total. That's Xbox content and services, Microsoft Gaming, and hardware. So just for context, this is what I was asking before. What do we think how much it would cost per person? If they've got 17,000 people working for them, each quarter at that $255,000 per head per annum, if you bring that back to a quarterly cost, it's about $1.08 to $1.1 billion a quarter in labor cost alone. Just direct labor cost. If they're working this accountability margin that they're talking about, they've got a maximum in that quarter that they could use, which would have been $4.1 billion. And if 1.1 of that $4.1 billion of maximum amount of expenditure they are allowed to have relates to labor, that sounds like they got a heap of money left over to do stuff with, right? Well, let's take a comparative in that market space. Would we say that Microsoft Gaming in total would spend more or less per quarter than PlayStation would have to operate? If we were apples for apples within that, or as much as we can get Granny Smiths to Lady Reds. Does the rest of the panel here say that there's some level of like for like here that we can assess? That Microsoft produces more games, pumps more games out, they've got a larger head count, that we would think that as a marker that there should be some level of resemblance between the two, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
yeah, I would say they spend more money, Falky, by the way. Given
Microsoft
head count,
would spend
more money. Yes, given headcount.
Does anyone want to have a
Yeah.
guess at what an average quarterly cost for PlayStation, not Sony, just PlayStation, what their average quarterly cost is for the last 12 months to the end of December?
What is it?
$7.2 billion a quarter. Now, this will probably shake some foundations. For argument's sake, so we've established that at the 30% accountability margin for the quarter just finished at Microsoft Gaming, not just Xbox, but all of Microsoft Gaming had a maximum allowable expenditure of $4.17 billion. Their closest market rival or market competitor averages 7.2 billion, and we would expect that Microsoft would have to spend more than PlayStation would. Now, PlayStation spends a stupid amount of money on marketing to keep that market share. So let's wind this back a bit. If they spent 2/3 of what PlayStation spend per quarter, that's still $4.8 billion of expenditure. They're still set, what's that, $620 something million in deficit. They can't. This 30% accountability margin makes it damn near impossible for them to hit any targets, right? And that's assuming they only spend 2/3 what PlayStation spent, and they still can't get to that number. They'd have to spend about half, it's about 60% of what PlayStation spend quarter to quarter to be able to keep track with that 30% margin that they have been told they have to hit. And you think about they've only generated $5.95 billion in revenue. If they were going to spend the same as PlayStation, they'd need another 7.2 down to 5.9. They need another $1.3 billion out of the bank, and they're not getting any money out of the bank. And they've got to keep a 30% margin. Yeah, I don't know if that makes some sobering reading and hearing for those that are out and about there, but if their labor cost alone is 1.08 to 1.1 billion, there's not a lot of money left to do anything else with. And then let's not forget, this is before those corporate overheads come in and crush the shit out of it. So, yeah, so the three of us are on this panel. We all understand what that means. For those listening at home, that ain't good.
No, and this is why I've often argued that yes, they're making hardware next generation, but one, the hardware I think is going to be very expensive to consumers. They're going to sell at a very premium price, and I think that, and I've said this, they're going to go full third party. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see some more studio closures, just based on what you just said, Falky. Yeah. I've speculated, and I think Logic, I think you have too, that there could be some more studio closures, a consolidation of studio closures, because they could probably just get by with, the ABK, the Bethesdas, some of their bigger titles, right? Why would they need to keep a Undead Labs? Why would they need to keep a who's the one that's doing Clockwork Revolution, Logic? In
Exile.
In Exile.
It's phenomenal how much that, like, they're year to date 26 versus year to date for the Q2 25. They're $750 million down on revenue. And costs are going the other direction. But they're doing cost cutting activities and they still can't get this thing in check.
That's why I wouldn't be surprised, Falky, if there's more studio closures, layoffs.
Well, it's inevitable at this point that they're going to force AI into the gaming segments over there. They've already said they're going to do it, but they're going to accelerate that as the proving ground for this stuff. They're going to force it in there. There's going to be an issue around quality. We're already starting to see issues around quality from them being in the Microsoft environment for all the stuff they've bought in. But they're just going to have to offload physical locations and shift into a more productive, but they're going to have to find a way of making a more productive environment. We've seen with Naughty Dog and a couple of other studios that have had the whole, yep, be relaxed, work from home, work from the office, work when you want to work. We'll just make it work. And then suddenly it's like, no, we got deadlines, guys. Get your asses back in the office and get to work. And start cracking the whip to get some productivity out of people. Google's had a massive issue with it. So has Amazon. They're talking about 14 or 15,000 people laid off at Amazon to be replaced by AIs and whatnot, because, and half of that's in the back office. That's not in the warehouse, like warehouse floor. That's in the back office. So there's going to be a big change there. And there is a model where they're just a publisher and studio, but they've got to carve out so much cost to get back to a point that makes sense. It's to be $750 million down compared to the prior year at the halfway mark. That's not and that's after the biggest quarter's done. I don't see a recovery there. I don't see how you're going to recover that. The March quarter is going to be telling for them.
Yeah, I think Amy Hood had predicted that content services will be up next quarter.
No.
I think she said that on the investor call.
No. Well, not in the transcript I read. Where are we? Xbox content and services, we expect revenue to decline in the mid-single digits against prior year comparable. That benefited from a strong content performance, particularly offset by growth in Xbox Game Pass, and hardware revenue should decline year on year. That's in the forecast. And it's in the forecast slides too. It's
so they're forecasting a decline again then.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Not good. Yeah, more personal computing, Xbox content and services. This is for the Q3, decline in mid-single digits. And on that slide, the only other thing that's saying is going down, Windows OEM and devices revenue decline in low teens. Microsoft 365 commercial product revenue decline in low single digits, and server product revenue decline in low single digits. But those other areas, they're in other areas. They're offset by stupidly high margins and a ridiculously high growth in their revenue. I don't know, man. It's and the share price got smashed after the results. So
yeah, Wall Street wasn't happy with them, or
no,
with Microsoft.
Not at all. And I mean, like, we can sit here and bang on about bits and pieces for forever and whatnot, but I mean, we probably need to sit back ourselves, because the three of us have been talking about this for forever, going, how long can this go? How long can this keep going? This is a disaster. This is horrible. If this was any other business where that was the number one thing that business was doing, they'd have shut the doors on it years ago. It keeps getting strung along because of something going on in the background. And as Logic said before, Satya doesn't want that black eye. Well, at some point, there's going to have to be a write-down for the goodwill that they picked up. They took over $50 billion of goodwill in that ABK Act purchase. At some point, there will have to be an impairment or a write-down of that. We've already seen it happening. Sony did an impairment of Destiny 2 in their one of their more recent quarterly performances. And that was odd in itself. And instead of them saying, we'll do a write-down of the Bungie acquisition, it was, no, we're doing a write-down of that particular title, which said to me at the time that it's on its last legs and it's about to come to an end, because they're moving on to the next thing, because it hasn't generated the cash flow that they thought it was.
Mm-hmm.
And, Take-Two, would they buy Zynga?
They bought Zynga, yeah.
Yeah.
There was Zynga, yeah.
They took a massive write-down on that thing.
They
18
did.
months
Billions.
after they bought it. Billions, $3.2 billion write-down.
Yeah.
Take-Two has not had a positive earnings per share return to their shareholders for the last 3 years, I think. At the moment, GTA 6 is looking at starting from the negative $4 billion mark in terms of what it would have to do to return stuff to shareholders that have held the faith for that long. But I mean, these are, at some point, that goodwill write-down is going to have to happen. And when it happens, I don't know about anyone else on this panel or anyone else that's listening that works in it, but I'm pretty sure that when a goodwill write-down happens, that will have a negative double-digit percentage hit to the share price. Typically, the CEO is the first one to get kicked out. So unless Thatcher's got someone on the board by the short and curlies and is holding on really, really tight, if the auditors tell them they have to do it, or the accountants tell them the impairment says you've got to write this thing down and it's 10 or 15 or 20 billion dollars, that's going to have an impact. That's significant and material, and that will shake the shit out of the leadership at Microsoft, particularly with the amount of money that they are currently grabbing to invest in their AI stuff. The only reason why they wouldn't be shutting down Xbox and Microsoft Gaming, one of the main reasons why they wouldn't be doing a drastic overhaul and turning it off, is to try and avoid that impairment, because they're trying to show to the external auditors that they can get it to generate the cash over that 10-year period, but they are fast running out of time.
Mm.
Something else, just because I love working with numbers, I did a CAGR on, what was it? Combined annual growth. What is it? CAGR, combined annual growth rate.
Growth rate, yeah.
Yep. So I did a CAGR for Microsoft and the gaming, content and services, and hardware, those three different parts, over the last few years, from 2022 through to 2026, based off those second quarter results, right? So the 5-year combined annual growth rate for gaming is down 1.2% from 2022, Q2 2022. It's gone backwards over that period of time. Content and services has grown 0.36% over that period of time. And hardware has decreased 14.15% over that period of time. So I've effectively gone nowhere since 2022 in terms of content and services, and the other things are going backwards. And that's just looking at the Q2 intervals for the last, from 22, 23, 24, 25, and 26. It gets worse if you just look from 24 to 26. So these is all stuff that I said before, these people get paid shitloads of money to look at it, looking at, and going, well, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And it harks to what Logic was saying before. He says we front up all the time and go, the pathway forward looks great. The blueprint looks great. How do they keep standing on so many rakes? And the only thing that I can come back to is the only constant that's there is the leadership. The leadership at Microsoft Gaming hasn't changed. And I've, said this in plenty of times in the past and had people blow up at me about it. And I say the leadership needs to change, otherwise nothing's going to solve itself here. And then the leadership at Microsoft Gaming is inept in producing a profitable outcome. They're not doing it. So anyway, I need to stop prattling on with numbers because it's
no, it's fascinating.
You to sleep.
No. It's fascinating, Falky, and it's the kind of analysis that you won't get on many shows these days, and that's why we enjoy having you on.
When I figure out how to share a screen on this thing, you guys are cooked. I'm going to be here for hours.
One of the things I've heard internally at Xbox is that everyone at Xbox refers to Phil Spencer as the PR czar. He's good at PR and spinning things. So I don't disagree with your assessment of leadership there. I think Logic too is we've kind of had that conversation to ask that question. How is leadership still there given the performance that we've seen over at Xbox? So
Hey, imagine if Phil Spencer, Matt Booty, and Sarah Bond were in charge of BlackBerry. 9.85% of us would still be using physical keyboards on our phones.
Oh my goodness.
Don't. That's just a nightmare waiting to happen. That.
Yeah, I I've also heard that because what's the group that Xbox falls under again? Logic.
More personal computing.
Yeah,
personal computing. Yeah, I've heard that if Xbox is a reason for that segment, missing its targets, that it's not good, and that there could be more layoffs. Is what I've heard from.
That segment's really interesting. Well, that's the interesting segment because that's where they park a lot of that business to consumer stuff that is just an offshoot of the business to business stuff. So Windows 365 for home office, Dynamics Home Office, LinkedIn, and all those sort of things. So if they wanted to just go, well, we don't have more personal computing anymore, we'll just let these rats and mice things just pull back into whatever it is. The only thing that stands on its own really in that area is gaming. They missed an opportunity. They should have sold it off, and done it with a sell-off and leaseback arrangements for a 10-year period. They should have sold it to Savvy, and they missed out because Savvy's now gone and bought EA, and they're going to make an absolute killing out of that. Anyway.
All right, gentlemen. Logic, I don't know if you want to chime in real quick before we wrap up here.
Yep, I didn't have anything to add.
All right. I do want to say that's all we have for topics at the moment. I do want to thank everyone in the live chat for coming by and hanging out with us this evening. Falky, I want to say thank you again. Always great having you on. We need to figure out how to share your screen because I'd be interested to see you plug some of those numbers and run that analysis. But yeah, go ahead, Falky.
So yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to be able to.
Yeah.
It's just pull them straight off the financials. Put a couple of basic assumptions in that you could say this is a good background or a starting point, and then see what pops out, and then you start fiddling around with it, going, well, what would it mean if it's this or that, and just do some basic analysis. And it's not rocket science. It's achievable maths by anyone to a sort of a grade 10 standard, I guess. But
I wouldn't say anyone, but clearly by some of the comments we saw in the comment section today. But
you've got to be able to think laterally. There's a reason why there's not everyone can be an analyst. There's a reason for that. You've got to be able to pick up patterns and understand how businesses work and how segments work, and be able to then apply some, let's say, lateral thinking to it.
Absolutely.
It's not 1 + 1 = 2. It's, well, what does the 2 actually mean? So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. 110%. But Falky, always a pleasure having you on. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Considering that you're on the other side of planet Earth, literally on the other side of the globe. It's always a pleasure. Yep. Thank you.
No, we got to get you welcome. Thank you.
Got to get you back on sooner than later.
Yes.
So I want to thank Amy Hood, Game Logic, for joining us again. Logic, always a pleasure. I don't know if you want to plug your show again, Logic. I know you did the other day.
Yeah. So if you want to drop by a channel called Rounding Off Infinity on YouTube and check out right there at the top, there's a show called Gaming Outside the Algorithm, which is just me covering the business technology and legal side of the gaming business, absent the influences and sullying of Twitter, which is a platform that I no longer hang out on.
Yeah, you're not missing much on Twitter, as Falky can attest to.
There is 4/5 of nothing good going on that place at the moment.
Yeah, I don't disagree, but
one thing I'll mention, I don't hang out on Twitter. Unfortunately, I'm sometimes subjected to things BRAP sends me. So I did have occasion to see somebody who was running around saying PlayStation has been stagnant this generation. So there's a reason why I posted the figures that I posted in the chat of reflecting PlayStation G and NS segment revenue since the start of this generation, 2023 to 2025, and the overall console and PC gaming market revenue to show that their percentages, while they did dip during 1 year in 2021, slipping their revenue market share to 26.9%. They have grown their revenue market share from 28.4% to 35.1%. So they've gone through periods of being roughly a quarter of the PC and console gaming market to now a third. So I'm not sure what math results in the thought or theory that they've been static, because that's actually not mathematically the case.
I bet the next comment they said was, "Oh, but they haven't put out enough games." It's like PlayStation
Well,
has
that's
averaged first-party outputs of 2 to 3 games per year, and they've maintained that. So they're still doing the same shit they always did. There are 75% of their revenue comes from third-party games. That's still the same. That's what they've always been doing. Like, they have had the same business model operating from day one to yesterday to today. I don't know why people want to start throwing barbs at them, but it's worked and it's growing. You just pointed out, it's growing their share of the whole pie. But the pie's still growing, which is the other crazy thing about that too. Just to add to that analysis that Logic just did, they've increased their market share amongst that piece, but that market is growing still in terms of its size. So,
Yeah, it's been slow. There's been a little backsliding right over the years of the pandemic, but I mean, net it has grown from $88.1 billion in 2020 to $92.7 billion in 2025. And just before the yokels come at me, again, I will reiterate, since people have a hard time listening and catching words, this is market share by revenue. So this is the percentage of the total aggregate market revenue capture that goes to PlayStation. Not console market share, because consoles don't matter, and all that other stuff. This is how much revenue did the whole industry make, and what was the percentage take of that went to PlayStation.
Yeah. Static. That's funny.
Yeah, no, and the other thing too, I mean, like we've talked about on the show too. I mean, if you look at the core business of the performance of PS5 this generation, I mean, Sony's come out and have said, this is our most profitable, PlayStation generation to date. So
yeah, that's most profitable to date, and taking into consideration the increasing cost factors that they've had to deal with, and a historically and persistently painfully low profit margin. You imagine if they just got off to a flying start and they didn't have to do that, and Jim Ryan had done that restructuring he should have done to make sure that their margin was at 10 to 12% at the start of the damn thing, and not hovering down around the 4 to 5% mark where it was for 2 or 3 years. You imagine, some people, I tell you, go and get a university degree and then do 5 years of experience in the real world, and then come and talk to us about this stuff. Like, people that say these comments are mouthing off no idea what they're talking about.
No, they really don't. They really don't. Well, that's why we have you on, Falky, to help people. Hopefully, people get something out of it, get some better understanding.
Well,
of the inner workings.
You can only educate those that want to be educated.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. So, it says hidden Sarah says feelings based math. Yeah, I don't disagree with you with that. But yeah, no, Falky, seriously, always a pleasure. Got to get you back on again soon.
Thank you. Lovely to chat to you both.
Yeah, absolutely. And everyone in the live chat, thank you so much. Please do the YouTube thing, hit the like button. If you enjoyed the conversation tonight, you're new to the channel, consider subscribing, hit the bell notification so you're alerted when we go live. And we'll catch you all next week. Wednesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Till then, everyone have a great weekend. Thank you for watching.